today I want to share a little bit more about some of the technical type of stuff as well. So up here we can see a satellite, and the way that satellites work to give us images of the Earth, like what you might see in Google Earth, for example, is that they use the sunlight that hits the Earth, bounces off, and then they take that light back, and then they make a photograph out of that. And so this is called remote sensing. The satellite is remote, so it's not actually touching the Earth, and it's sensing, it's getting information about the environment, like we might use our own senses, our eyes, ears, smell, touch, taste, they're our senses. So satellites use sensors as well. I'm going to talk a bit about those as well. But for now, what I'd like to do is to take you to the Great Barrier Reef. And the Great Barrier Reef is great, right? So this area all the way up here, from the top of Queensland all the way down south. Now, for Australians, this is about the same size, the same area as all of Victoria, plus all of Tasmania put together. It's a really big area. And I'd like to know if anyone here knows how many reefs we actually have as part of the Great Barrier Reef, because it's actually made up of lots of individual ones. How many do you think that we have? Do we have 3? Do we have 124? Do we have 30,000? Lots of different estimates here and some good guesses, but interesting that not many people know actually how many reefs we have that make up the Great Barrier Reef. So here's the first little fact for you. There's about 3,000 individual reefs that make up the Great Barrier Reef. So it's a really, really big area. But what I'm going to do today is to take you just down this little southern area here, and we are going to go on a bit of a trip to this reef here. All right, so this is Heron Reef. And if we zoom all the way in, this is what it looks like from a satellite. So if we look from one end of the reef all the way to the other, that's about 11 kilometers. So it's actually kind of large, but remember, it's only one of 3,000. All right, so from this tip to that tip of the island there is about 800 meters. So about twice around a football field. And from the top of the island, let me get there. There, bottom of the island to the top of the island, about 400 meters. So once around a football field. It's pretty small. Now we have all the live coral all the way around the outside of the reef and some deeper water in the middle here. So let's go in. I want to take you to this little spot just up here. Let's zoom into there. All right, so this is what we can see from a satellite when we zoom all the way in. So I want you to tell me if you think you're able to see the live coral in this picture just here behind me. What do you reckon? Barely, no. It's pretty hard, isn't it? So the amount of detail, or what we call the resolution, is actually pretty low, but this is the best type of satellite imagery that we can actually get our hands on. So that's one of the reasons that I start looking at using drones. So here's an example of the exact same area, but using a drone. So tell me, do you think you can see the coral now? So the drone is a lot closer. So we can fly our drone up to about 100 meters or 400 feet above the reef, compared to a satellite, which is about 600 or 700 kilometers away. So kilometers, long way away with the drone imagery. Let's zoom in a little bit closer, and now tell me if you can see the live coral in this particular photo. Hopefully you should be able to see it around the edges of each of these corals, so the little brown bits around the edge there, and you can see we've actually got quite a lot of live coral there. And this is what it actually looks like if we jump into the water. All right, so this is some beautiful, what we call branching coral. So you might say, well, it's a lot easier to see the live coral here than in any of the pictures that you've shown me before, which I totally understand, it absolutely is. But here's the problem. We can't actually go to everywhere on the reef if we were going to dive to have a look and see how much coral we have. Because if we tried, this is what it looks like. This is my friend Javier. Can you see how little he is as we're zooming all the way out? And he's trying to find the live coral. And then you look back and you see how big the reef is. And remember, heron is just one of 3,000. So remember, if we had little Javiers swimming all over heron plus all over the Great Barrier Reef, it'd be pretty hard, right? So that's why it's important for us to look at other technologies that we can use to get this sort of information. And ideally, what we're trying to do is to take a photo like this and say, all right, what I want to know is how much live coral I have right here. Now, this is just one photo. And if I'm at Heron Island, I might take thousands and thousands of photos, and then I go to another reef and take thousands and thousands more. So I'm a little bit lazy and I don't want to go and figure out every little patch that's live or dead. So I use a computer to help me out with that. And so this is ultimately what we're trying to get at. So get the computer to figure out, well, this is what live coral looks like. And in this case, all the dark green patches, live coral looks like this. Can you find me the live coral everywhere else as well? And that's what a computer does for us. And so this is fine if we just want to know, okay, there's coral, there's rock, there's sand, some really basic categories. Sometimes we want to know a little bit more. So I'm going to say, let me know if you can tell the difference between these two corals. So one on this side and one on this side. What's the difference between those corals that I've shown there? So we've got questions of maybe some's dead, some's alive. Which one do you think is dead? Which one do you think is alive? There's obviously a color difference, so brown versus white. What's going on there? So Jasmine and Felicity think that the white is dead. So some really good answers coming on through here. And Miller and Ziggy have noted that this side is bleached. So this is what we call coral bleaching. So good answer there. Basically what we have on this side, a really healthy coral. Now coral has inside its cells, it has an algae that it uses to photosynthesize. So just like the trees outside, they use chlorophyll to bring in that sunlight to provide their food source. Corals do the same. And so that's what you're seeing on this side, a really healthy coral. It's got lots and lots of algae in its tissues and it's going to be happy. On this side, we've got one that's probably a little bit unhappy. Maybe the temperature is a bit too hot for it. So what it does is all those algae that it would normally use for food, it decides, actually, I think you're toxic. And it's out. And when it does that, you see the skeleton that's underlying here. So that's why it's called bleached. And that's a problem then, because if it spits out the very thing that allows it to grab sunlight and make it into food, what do you think is going to happen to the coral? So it doesn't necessarily die straight away. But what it does do is probably get pretty hungry, right? So corals can recover from this bleached state. So they can go from here back to here if they're not uncomfortable for too long. So it is possible for this to recover, thankfully, because we do have a lot of problem with bleaching on the Great Barrier Reef. So it's good to know that they're going to be okay. But so it's really cool that some of you have noticed, obviously, that there's this color difference, so brown to white, okay? But how brown and how white? Our eyes aren't really that good at telling us that sort of information. So what we do is to use sensors, so just like the satellite, or instruments that measure just what the color looks like. And this helps us understand how healthy or not healthy it is. So you can see I'm diving here and I've got one of these little instruments in my hand. It's called a spectrometer. Basically, it measures how much light comes off or what the color the coral is. Now, I can use that same instrument up on my drone. You can see it just tucked under there. Now, just down in the corner, you see it. It's about the size of a matchbox, so really quite small, fits on a small drone here. Now, I want you to give me a hand here in trying to analyze some of the information that comes off here. So when we fly the drone out and it's taking all these measurements of color. Now, color is actually numbers, which is a little bit of a funky thought, but Krista spoke a little bit about this last week as well. So I want to step you through this so you can help me do some analysis as well. So if we have a look here, the x-axis of this graph shows us wavelength, so different colors of light. So you can see where blue light is, green light is, red light is. All the way down here is ultraviolet. So you might have heard about ultraviolet in terms of giving us sunburn. And all the way up here is near infrared light. So our eyes can't see those wavelengths, but we can see it with these special types of sensors. And so it's like a superpower that can see things that our eyes can't see. Now, up this side here, that way, here we go, the amount of reflectance, okay? So if you've got a high number here, it's really bright. All right, so I'm going to explain this in something that probably sounds really familiar to you. So I'd like you to tell me what you think generally is the color of a tree. And I guess it depends on the season as well, right? But often we say that trees are green, so really, really basic. I mean, obviously they've got brown branches and all that side of things, but let's just go with the most basic side of things. A tree is green. So let's see how it would look like on one of these types of graphs. So this is what a tree looks like. So it doesn't reflect a lot of blue light. We don't see it as blue. It reflects more green. We think trees are green. So see that bump there, just over this green wavelength here. So we say, oh yeah, trees are green because that's what our eyes can see. They actually reflect lots and lots of light up here in the near infrared that our eyes can't see. That helps us tell how healthy they are. But importantly, let's just look at this little bit here. See, this is red light. Okay, so you know the color red, plants absorb a lot of red light. So basically red light comes in from the sun, they suck it all up, and that's what they use to photosynthesize or produce their own food. So you can see this is a healthy plant, so it just goes down really low in this graph. Now we can do the same thing for a coral. Now can you see the difference between the two lines? So for my tree and my coral, really cool with coral is it's got 1, 2, 3 little bumps, which is very, very unique for coral. So if we see this sort of thing in the environment, we say, oh, hey, there must be some coral there. And we can do this for all different types of things in the environment because they all have these different fingerprints, if you like, in the way that they show us their colors, and way more colors than what our eyes can see. So here's an example of lots of different things. So we've got some sand, I've got some shallow water, some beach rocks, there's some rocks on the beach there, our coral and our trees. But here, can you see, common to all of them, this little area here and up, every single one of them, even the sand on the reef, has this little dip. So that means that it's still got some kind of ability to photosynthesize or draw in that red light. And there would most definitely be little bits of chlorophyll in the sand, even when the sand is exposed, because they'll be left there from when the tides come in. So that's pretty cool. Now, what I'd like to do is I want to see if you can give me a hand in analyzing some of the data that we see. So let's check it out. I'm going to drop on over to Google Earth and see if you can give me a hand. All right, so let's start with something easy. If I zoom all the way in here, can you see these dots? These dots are all where I've flown my drone and taken some of these measurements. You should be able to see, I think, what this is, right? What about if I click on one of the dots, and what I want to do is I click on one of the dots here, and you can see one of these spectral signatures or fingerprints, if you like, right? So can everyone see that that's what a tree should look like? We can have a look at a couple of different trees here, and they all look kind of similar. All right, but my question is, if I come out over the water, now I know when I look all the way in here, there's not a lot of detail, right? So it's probably quite hard to see. I don't know, is it live coral or not? But what about if I click on one? What do you think? What do you think? Do you think you could tell me if you think whether or not I have some live coral in that one? Excellent. Yeah, so see, we've got this 1, 2, and 3 little bumps and photosynthesizing. Awesome. So can you see that even though the satellite can't tell that it's coral, let's have a look at another bit. Oh, I think I've got some more. That's quite amazing. So I can just use the coral. So I can just use those little graphs to tell me whether or not I've got coral, which I think is super cool. So we do lots of other things with drones on the reef as well. So let's have a look at some more examples. Let's have a look at this one. I want to see how good your eyesight is. Can you see any animals in this picture on the reef? Can see some. I might give you a hand, hey? Let's have a look. Yeah, so someone's seen a shark. Someone thinks they can see dolphins. I'm not sure there's any dolphins there, but I could be wrong. I never know what I'm going to see in some of my photos. All right, so now I zoom in. Can you see this? We got a shark, we got a turtle, and we have a ray as well. So that one just behind my head. Pretty tough, but now hopefully you've got your eyes in there, right? So let's try another one. Can you see any animals in this picture? Alexander and his family thinks they can see some fish. Some people think they can see some sharks. There are sharks. How many sharks can you see? Not sure. 5 sharks from Jasmine and Felicity. Good eyesight. Yeah, great. So some good answers coming in there. Let's have a look, and hopefully you'll be able to see them on the next slide. All right, so can you see these 3 up the top here? Now there's also a couple down below here. But the thing is, we can use a computer to say, well, you know what? A shark has got a very particular shape. Let's look for that shape. Let's look for the contrast in the background. The computer can do this a lot faster than we can do. So that's some of the work that I do to try and figure out what we can see in the environment and how fast we can see these types of things as well. All right, one of the other things I like looking at is temperature. So we spoke about corals and how they bleach. Now this one gives us a good feel for what's actually going on in temperature in the reef. All right, so I want to give you an idea of this. So this is also in the same location. And if you see just behind my head up here, we've got a buoy in the water with a little thermometer in it as well. So that's telling us the temperature. But what about if I fly my drone over and actually measure the temperature across the whole reef? This is what it looks like. So can everyone see just through the bottom of the wreck here, there's like this horizontal line. Can you see that? So that's where we've actually got changes in water temperature. And that's actually something that we can use to help understand what's going to happen with coral bleaching as well. And so this is something like what you might have experienced if you've ever been out swimming at the beach and just swim along and it's nice and cool, and then sometimes you swim through a bit of a warm patch and someone says, oh, somebody just peed there. Well, not necessarily. Mostly it's just different water currents moving around, and that's what we capture in through some of this information as well. Now I want to show you some of my drones that I use. So let's check out a couple of the drones, and then we're actually going to take one of the drones outside so you can see what it sees when it's looking as well. So let's try this. So first of all, I wanted to introduce you to Casper. This is one of my drones. This is a fairly standard drone that you can buy at a lot of different electronic stores. It's got a little camera here, and I have the controller that I use to control the drone when I'm out flying. Now you'll see that I've taken the propellers off this one because I'm going to turn this on in a second, and I really don't want it accidentally taking off in my face, right? Because that could be kind of dangerous if I had one of these cutting into my face. Not so good. So one of the really good safety tips is to keep propellers off unless you're actually going to fly. All right, so let's have a look at this. I'm actually going to turn it on. Watch the camera and watch what it does when I turn it on. We're going to get some sound, we'll get some light splashing, and the camera's going to sort of sort itself out and figure out where it is. So it's doing that by itself, and it's now all sorted, all happy. Now I'm actually going to give that to my trusty assistant Paul, and he's going to take that outside for me, and I'm going to show you what it looks like, what he's seeing through that drone as well. All right, so now you should be able to see my my phone, right, on your screen. And now what I'm going to do is to actually connect this. There we go. So you should be able to see what my drone is seeing outside in my backyard. Yes, this is a live feed, Alex. So it's feeding through from the drone to my iPhone, which I'm then feeding directly to you in Zoom. All right, so we're not actually going to fly this because we're in a suburb and that would be dangerous and actually also breaking a lot of rules. But Paul's actually going to pretend to fly it, all right? So I'm going to say, pretend to take off. And Paul's going to take off. So this is what it would look like if you were watching through my screen, and Paul's going to fly around here. And yeah, it does look a little bit of like a target sighting as well. So you can see this part of our front garden here, and you can see lots and lots of information around the side of the screens as well. So it tells me how many GPS it's using to know where its location is. You can see lots of information about the camera itself. You can see how far away it is from its home point, which is where it took off. You can see how high it is as well. And I can also use my controller to control the camera. So for example, if I wanted to take a photo of my grass, I would look directly down there, and I'm going to get a photo of Paul's feet. Or maybe I'll turn it up and I'll have a look at these plants here, right? So that's actually what it would look like if I was flying my drone. And so I can actually set that going and set it off on a mission, and it does all of this automatically. All right, so hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea about how we use drones on the reef, but also a bit of what it looks like to imagine yourself in my shoes and see what it's like to be with that drone as well. I do use quite a few different types of drones that I work with. So now there was a question that I missed earlier on asking why there was a dip in the graph just before the near infrared. And so that's chlorophyll absorption, well, it's light absorption by chlorophyll. And that's what I mean about giving us information about how plants and corals as well are using light for photosynthesis. So that's actually in the red region, it's absorbing red light, which is why we see plants as green. How much is a drone? So they vary. So we have really, really small drones that might be about $100, and then I use that for training my students, for example, all the way up to my most expensive drone is $70,000. So it's quite a big one. It carries some really, really expensive camera equipment. The drone that I just showed you before is about $2,000. So we use different ones for different purposes. When you're flying over the reef, do you have to manually take photos? Thank you, Jasmine and Felicity. Great question. No. So these drones are really smart. So what I do is I will set out an area that I would like to go and map, and I will decide how high I want to fly my drone. So the higher I fly, the more area I can cover, but I get a little less detail. So I'd make that decision how high I want to fly, and then I set it out on its mission, and it will take photos automatically for me. It's kind of, I set it out, if you imagine you're mowing the lawn, you go backwards and forwards, so you don't miss anything. We do the same thing with our drones as well. What's my favorite reef? Well, I do really like Heron Reef, the one that I've shown you here today. Probably because I've just spent a lot of time there. I started going there more than 20 years ago, so it's a pretty special place to me, and that's what you see in the background here as well. How much is the drone plus equipment? That's actually a really good question, because I said the drone might be about $2,000, but the plus equipment is really, really important, because we always need extra batteries. We need things like extra propellers in case we have a crash or anything. We need extra safety gear. So one of the things that I always have with me is Kevlar gloves. So if for whatever reason I need to approach a drone with the propellers on, I always have my gloves on me. There's lots of people that have cut their hands, but I'm always extra specially careful. So there's always little bits and pieces of extra things that we need. We have to charge our batteries in a certain way. Then we need carry cases and lots of extra stuff as well. And training courses, and then software, lots of stuff. Can you fly drones in parks? That's a good question, and one I can't exactly answer because it depends on the park. So in Australia, our rules are that you must stay 30 meters away from people. Now, a lot of the time that will mean that you can't fly in a park if it's a public space and it's likely that there's people coming and going all the time. We also have a rule that you never ever fly over the top of people. So again, in areas where there's lots of people, it's pretty hard to fly. Now, it is something that I do see broken. It's a law that's broken all the time, not just in Australia, but overseas as well. So it's something that's really, really important to know, and there's really good safety reasons for that as well, because when you've got something like this that's spinning super, super fast, it can chop things. It's like a blender that you might make a smoothie. It's a smoothie making blender flying through the sky. So you really don't want anyone to be near you when you're doing that. The black dots that you showed us is that lots of individual photos. So when I was showing you on Google Earth before, those individual black dots, they weren't actually photos that time. So that was using that special measurement tool that just measures the light at that one spot. It's like it's taking sort of one reading rather than a particular photo. But often I choose if I take photos as I fly or if I take those measurements. It sort of depends. Have I ever lost a drone? No, thankfully. It's something that I'm really, really careful with my equipment because it's worth a lot of money, and it's worth all my time for my research as well. So I'm very, very careful with what I do. I make sure I follow all the rules and the regulations, and sometimes bad things happen, but thankfully, so far, keep my fingers crossed, I've been all good with my drones. What can you do when someone breaks the drone rules? Is it actually policed? Yeah, again, that's another really good question. Yes, you can. You can lodge a complaint to the Civil Aviation Safety Authority, or if you're in the United States, for example, it's FAA. So it sort of depends on what your jurisdiction is as to where you go to lodge any of those complaints. There's other parts of it as well. So, for example, you can't fly in national parks. So while that's not an aviation regulation, that's part of the national parks regulations. So there's lots and lots of other little things that you need to be aware of. Some cities don't let you fly at all. So Brisbane City Council, for example, has some bylaws that don't allow you to fly in much of those areas. So yeah, it's a challenging one, but is it actually policed? Yes and no. So a lot of people that fly illegally will then post videos of themselves doing that on YouTube. And it is something that the aviation safety authorities do check out. And people can get fines of thousands and thousands of dollars as well. So it's really not something that you want to be doing, not only because you don't want to get fined, but you just want to be safe as well, right? So it's not a good idea to be doing those sorts of things. The rules exist for very particular reasons. All right, so it is coming to an end. I want to thank you so much for joining me, either live on Facebook, on Zoom, or if you're watching the replays. Thanks a lot for coming along. It's been great to chat with you all today and share some of the work that I do out on the reef with my drones. Be happy to answer any other questions that you have. If you want to just head into Facebook, you can always put comments in there. I always check that. And so I can answer anything from there. Otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day or evening, depending on where you are today. Thank you so much for joining us here live in orbit, and I will see you next time. Thanks, everyone.